Hey everybody, let's take a look at Chapter 11. Of course, in Chapter 10 we were looking at individual approaches, process approaches, individual and group approaches. Now we're looking at how an organization development practitioner works with an entire organization. Now it doesn't mean that if you have 2,000 people, you get 2,000 people in the room at the same time. But you don't have to rule that out either, because there's some amazing, what we call large group interventions that I've used and that are being used that get literally hundreds, and in some cases even more than that, into the thousands of people together at one time in one place, to better themselves as an organization. So let's take a look at some of these things. Organization process approaches. So learning objectives are here. Take a look. So what are the diagnostic issues? What is an organization confrontation meeting? What are the intergroup relation interventions of microcosm or small groups and intergroup conflict when you've got two groups are fighting, two departments are fighting, IT and engineering, or HR and I don't know, sales or something, or two groups within the same organization. Describe and evaluate the effectiveness of large group interventions, and I'll even show you some pictures. So, diagnostic issues in organization process interventions. So what this means is at the organizational level, you're trying to, of course, collect diagnostic data, collected at the organizational level. At the organizational level means that the information we want to know isn't about how effective a certain individual or a department is. It's how effective the entire organization is. So that's what we mean when we say we're going to intervene at the individual level. Means we're going to do something for one person. If we intervene at the group level, we're going to do something for two or more people. If we intervene at the organizational level, it means we're going to do something that causes the whole organization to become involved in some way. So OD practitioners should be able to clearly articulate a sound business case for how the environmental pressures, the things that are acting on the business that they have no control over, or organization design features, how they are actually designed themselves, constrain current effectiveness. So you've got to help the organization understand what you're going to do and how it's going to help them. So the first thing is an organization confrontation meeting. It's an intervention that you would facilitate designed to mobilize the resources of the entire organization to identify problems. So it's problem focused, set priorities, and action targets. So what are the problems? What should we do? How are we going to do it? Right here, the action. And then let's get underway. So here's how a confrontation meeting works. We schedule the meeting, and let's just say that there's some type of well, you'll see if you have seen, if you might have already seen it, but you certainly will see it this week, is a YouTube video of a bar rescue, an episode of Bar Rescue, which is a regular show that's been on a number of years on television. And its host is a fellow named John Taffer, and he's a consultant who is in the business of saving bars that are about to go out of business. Very, very interesting. If you've seen it, you know what it's all about. If you haven't seen it, they're very, very interesting because he comes in and he uses a process like this. He uses several of the things that we're going to talk about today. So you'll see that John comes into these bars and they're operating dysfunctionally, and then he helps turn them around. And some of them he does successfully, and some of them I'm not sure, but a regular, let's say a regular organization, so things aren't going well. Let's just say it's a restaurant. Just think of a restaurant, a normal restaurant where you might go at Denny's, it doesn't matter, but upscale or normal or whatever. But let's just say that the restaurant, that there were problems and they weren't sure why, but the business was falling off, the quality of the food wasn't good, the managers weren't getting along with the waiters weren't getting along with the bartenders, and it's just not a fun place to be. So they're going to bring you in. So the first thing you're going to do is schedule the meeting. So you got meeting scheduled. Then if you think about a restaurant, create groups representing multiple perspectives. So you might say, we're going to come in, we're going to close the restaurant on Sunday, we're going to get everybody together, we're going to bring everybody in, and we're going to get the waiters together, we're going to get the bartenders together in a group, the waiters will be in their own group, the management staff will be in their own group, the cooks will be in their own group, and so on. And they're going to meet, and they're going to, first we'll set some ground rules that we're not out here to kill each other. We're not here to throw rocks at each other. We're out here to try to figure out how to make this place better and a more fun place to work and make money and be happy. So they set some ground rules about how to do this. And then finally, the groups identify problems. So they're sitting in separate groups, probably in a hotel somewhere where there's room enough to spread them out. And they're having a discussion about what's going on. What do they see? What do they see as the problems from where they sit? So the cooks, the bartenders, the waiters. And then they come back and each group reports out to the larger group. So everybody else is just listening at this point, and they're saying, these are the groups, these are the problems that we recognize. It could be management problems, it could be materials problems, it could be, we need new equipment in the kitchen, who knows? But there could be a number of things that these groups are saying without throwing rocks at each other. They're saying, hey, let's create a master list of everything that's happening that we can figure out that leads to this restaurant not working the way it should be. And then we're going to form some problem-solving groups. These problem-solving groups might be cross-functional, which means they might have one bartender, one waiter, somebody from management in it, maybe somebody from the kitchen, I don't know. And they're going to collaborate together to form us. And let's figure out the process where it takes us 35 minutes to get a hamburger served. This is crazy. Our competitors serve hamburgers in 10, 15 minutes. We're losing clientele, blah, 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 blah. Rank the issues and the opportunities, develop an action plan, go for it. Provide periodic reports. So the role of the consultant, get everybody together, set some ground rules, break them apart as appropriate, have them identify the problems, report the problems to the large group, create a list, get usually cross-functional problem-solving groups, go to work, make a list of things that you have to do, go do it. That's pretty simple. That's how it works. It's pretty basic. Okay. Next, intergroup relations interventions. So now you're coming in and you're saying, hey, the quality of the group relationships here. This is where you probably might enjoy the John Taffer Bar Rescue video. If you haven't seen it, I would say now's the time to go see it and then return to this because it'll make so much more sense. But you can come in and work with a small group, a microcosm, which is a smaller group of a larger organization. And the thing that you're trying to do is resolve these intergroups conflict. Intergroup conflict means conflict between two groups, so the cooks and the waiters aren't getting along. Small groups that solve problems in the larger system, that's kind of that was alluding to a minute ago. Small group member characteristics must reflect the issue being addressed. So in other words, if you've got a problem with cooks and the waiters aren't getting the meals on time to keep the customers happy, who would you want to be in these microcosm groups? Would be the cooks and the waiters. And then it's the primary mechanism for change is parallel processes. In other words, what you're trying to do here is get the cooks and the waiters to work in parallel. In other words, to work so that they're, I'd like to say, working together, getting on the same page, making sure that we both understand what the other group is doing. How does it work? You identify the issue, you convene the group, you provide group training if they need it, and how to solve problems and communicate and so on. You address the issue, take care of it, and you dissolve the group. And you'll see that kind of in the John Taffer Bar Rescue clip that comes this week that hopefully you've already seen. So how about working with intergroup conflict? Intergroup conflict means conflict between two groups. So the bartenders and the waiters are fighting. Or the cooks aren't getting along with the management staff or whatever it might be. So the groups and the consultant convene to address the issues, and the groups are asked to address these questions. These are very interesting questions. One group's there. Here's what the cooks are asked: what qualities or attributes best describe our group? We're the cooks. What are our best qualities? But we're not getting along with the waiters. So the next question is, what qualities or attributes best describe their group? The waiters. So qualities and attributes. These can be positive and negative. And how do we think the other group will describe us? And there's actually more questions you can ask. And I've used this process quite a lot. It's what do people think of us? What do we think they think of us? And so on. The whole idea is that you're really kind of getting your cards on the table. The groups exchange and clarify the answers. They analyze the discrepancies and work to understand their contribution and their perception. So, the cooks have this perception of the waiters have this perception of the cooks, and then blah, 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 and you and that, and blame. But what ultimately happens is you get them together, and they discuss these discrepancies and contributions, and through your facilitation you help them develop action plans to fix them. Large group interventions focus on issues. This is the whole organization or large segments of it, responding to environmental change, things like new technology. Lots of different programs. There's a Future Search Conference, open space meeting. I'll show you some pictures. Open systems planning. The World Cafe is a real popular process. And things that accelerate decisions. There's also a process called appreciative inquiry. So a large group meeting, the assumption is that the members' perceptions play a major role in the relationship. In other words, if you get enough employees in one room, they can certainly have something to say about how they perceive the organization, how it's running. Not so much leadership doing the perceiving, but the members of the organization. Organization members share a common view of how to fix things. So you can notice here, organization members, organization members, organization members. So you're getting, instead of working with leadership, you're actually working with large groups, and you'll see a couple of pictures here in a minute. Large group process meetings, this is how to prepare for it. I'll show you some pictures, but you identify a compelling theme. What are we coming to talk about? You know, airlines, American and U.S. Airways are merging. That's a pretty important topic for them. Select appropriate stakeholders, get the right people there, develop the tasks, and then you can use different methods. I'll show you some pictures from open space in just a second here. Open systems methods, you map the current environment. You're trying to, again, we've got enough people in the room, you're trying to make sense of what's going on in the organization. So you're mapping the environment, you're assessing the organization's responses, clarifying the mission, creating a realistic future scenario. Remember, who's doing this are all the employees, not you. They are. Open space, if you haven't read about it yet, take a time to learn about open space technology. Harrison Owen created that years ago. These are some of the principles that the law of 2 feet simply means if you're in a group, and I'll show you pictures in a minute, and you're not making a contribution or learning anything, get up and walk away. These principles guide the entire session. Whoever comes to the meeting is the right people. Whatever happens is the only thing that could have happened. Whatever it starts at the right time. When it's over, it's over. I'll explain that in just a second. The participants create the agenda. Oops, come back here. The participants create the agenda, and the activity is coordinated through information postings. And I'll show you pictures of that right now. First, we'll get to open space technology in a second. One of the other processes, the World Cafe, I've used these in a number of settings. You can see, in this case, they're preparing for a large group meeting, and what's happening is, see all these little tables, and they have a checkered tablecloth. There's a piece of flip chart paper. Those are pens there. You probably can't see those. And there's usually a rose in the center of the base. And these people come in, and the idea is you get the entire organization talking about what's going on for them. One person takes notes at the paper, and then systematically throughout the day, 3 people will get up from the table and go sit at another table. And you can see how you set the tables up. This is another setup. Again, you can see the pens here, the middle of the page, and trying to create a cafe setting. Why? Because cafes are one of the most congenial, fun places to go and talk. See, we can see the roses. So these are all different settings. Here's one you probably wonder, where is this taking place? Probably far away, like Japan, perhaps. So now the people come and they start their conversation. Again, one person stays at the table as an anchor. The other people move from table to table. And you can see here they're starting right down there. You're starting to take notes. So at some point, at an appointed time, usually about 45 minutes or so, let's say he's the anchor, he stays, these 3 get up and they go to another table. And what happens is you start mixing these tables up, and then you start collecting the data. See the information here on the flip charts and on the wall. And as the data is collected, as these people have these conversations, the consultant and them, they're actually collecting the information. Now you can see this is what we mean by large group. In some cases, you have groups that are over 500 or even 1,000 people for 3 days in one great big space. So these are absolutely stunning to watch and see how they work. In this case, they brought in, this group brought in a person who was an artist. And as the data, as the information, the issues came forward from the tables, these are the things that people were talking about. Then they went up and they put them on the wall in great big panels, big banners, if you can imagine that. And of course, you can see in the top left corner, I wonder who the client was. It was Boeing. But look at this. You can say, well, here's this elephant in the middle of the room, right? And the lack of collaboration was the issue. And so this artist put all this here, silos. We've got silos instead of communication. We've got pressure. We've got, I'll just send an email, and so on. So very, very creative. Here's another way of looking at it. Different color paper. And these things, again, were, these are conversation cafes. I'll take a couple minutes here and walk you through open space technology. These are pictures I took of an event I did a few years ago. Two healthcare systems were merging. One hospital system took over the other hospital system, and they had to decide how's the best way to organize themselves and deal with this monstrous amount of change that were coming in. So we're in one great big building. This is actually a golf course ballroom on an upscale golf course in Scottsdale, Arizona, near Phoenix. And there's two great big circles of chairs. And you can see all the people here. This is just before I entered the circle to explain the open space technology rules to them, which calls for them to decide their own agenda. So at this point, there's two circles. You can see there's a circle of chairs surrounded by another circle of chairs. And these people are not sure what they're going to talk about. And what they actually end up doing, let me back up here a second, is they go to the center of the circle once they understand what the rules are, and I explain the rules, and I say, go ahead and begin. Each person goes to the center, not each person, anybody who wants to goes to the center of the circle, and using a half flip chart or quarter flip chart page, they write something that they want to talk about that day that has to do with the theme, which is two hospitals coming together. And then they post it on the wall. You can see these are all locations in the room, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and so on. What you can't see over here are times. These are different times, like 9:30 to 10:45 or something like that. And these are the things that they wanted to talk about. So they go to the center of the circle. They say, my name's so-and-so. I want to talk about this. They post this over here on the room wall. It's called the newsroom. And what happens is, after all the things are posted, the big group breaks up into smaller groups. And at one time in the same room, there's these different conversations going on that were, again, posted right here. And then they lead to these different conversations. And the law of 2 feet says if this is you and you're sitting here and you're not learning or getting much of it, you can get up and go walk around, go somewhere else. And also what's important is that the top leadership is there, the CEO is there, the vice presidential staff is there. So if anybody says, we've got a question, they have the answer in the room. At the end of each of those individual breakout sessions, that's a breakout session right there, one of the people takes the results from that and they go over to the newsroom. This is right, same room. This is against one of the walls, and they type in the data that came from that one group meeting. And before the end of the day, that data is compiled, and everybody that day when they leave gets a summary of everything that occurred at the same time. So that's kind of a very short look at open space technology. But what I'm trying to indicate to you is that there are ways of working with organizations where instead of going in and working with 2 or 3 small groups or working with a department, that you are actually facilitating anywhere from 1 to several hundred people at the same time. And the setup is you get them going, and then it's a self-organizing system that takes care of itself. And finally, the last slide, positive methods. This speaks to appreciative inquiry, and this is a different approach. You come in and you say, what's the organization's positive core? In other words, what's good about us? Well, as a restaurant, we've been pretty good. We've got a good history, and actually our menu's pretty good. We've got some problems here, but okay. Well, based on what we've done in the future that was good, what is an envisioned future of something that's more desirable and more fulfilling? In other words, how can we get better? And we're not looking at what we're doing wrong. We're just looking at how we can get better. It's a positive model. We're not going to say we've got problems and everything's broken. We come in and we said, hey, we're around. What are the things that we're doing good? How can we take what we do well and make things better? Design the structural and the systems. In other words, make the changes that will best reflect the dream that they have rather than a view of what's broken and not working. And then create the specific actions. That whole process is called appreciative inquiry. And that's it. So we've looked at, how very, very basically how we can work with organizations. And when you take a look at the John Taffer clip, and again, that's about 40 minutes long because it's an hour program. They've taken all of the advertisements out of it. But you notice that John Taffer comes in, he works at the individual level when he's talking to the owner. He works at the group level when he might be talking to a couple of bartenders. And he works with the whole organization when he has them all together in one room and he's talking about. And of course, Taffer's approach is really different because of the significance of the problems that these bars are having. But for the most part, it's representative of what an OD practitioner comes in. You come in and you create discomfort. You've got to show them in some way or help them recognize, this is not working. We're losing money. We're about to go out of business. The people aren't happy. The customers are leaving. So we're going to hire you, the OD person, to come in and help us out. So anyway, that's it. Please be sure, if you haven't seen that Taffer thing, plan about 40 minutes. It's really good, and I think you'll like it and create a lot of conversation. So we'll see you in the threads, folks.